Cities are where the world happens. Over half the global population now lives on just 1% of the planet. But what makes a city truly livable, thriving, and future ready? I'm Belinda Coates, and this is The Connector. On this episode of The Connector, I'm joined by Ludo Campbell-Reid, a globally recognised city maker who has shaped Melbourne, Auckland, Cape Town and London. He's played a key role in cementing some of these cities as the world's most livable. And he's been instrumental in large-scale urban transformations as well, such as Canary Wharf. Welcome to the program, Ludo.
Hello, Belinda. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's so great to have you here and talk about cities, and you've been involved in so many of the world's most amazing cities. And with half the world's population living in 1% of the world, why are people drawn to cities?
What a great question. I think the word people is probably the best way to answer that. People are attracted to people at the most basic of levels, and cities are humanity's greatest invention in many respects. They're areas of invention, commerce, creativity and opportunity, and that is why people are drawn to them like moths to light.
When you think about people and attracting people, we're both from Melbourne, and I think Melbourne attracts some wonderful people. So you played a significant role in building the case for Melbourne to be the #1 most livable city in the world. What makes cities livable, and what does the future livable city look like in a post-COVID era?
Livability is a really fascinating piece because I think it's really quite personal. And so different people's views on what livability is or is not is a very personal thing. But livable cities are compared globally through benchmarking reports. What I've noticed over the years is that many of those older reports are about comfort, safety, economic stability. But going forward, I think it's more about resilience, about connectivity, and really things like belonging and sense of community, and that will determine the future of livable cities.
I love that, and I think your role in past cities, you've been shaping cities around the world, including Auckland, Cape Town and London. Is there a universal blueprint for a successful modern city?
Yeah, I don't think there is a blueprint. There's no silver bullet. There's no sort of one-size-fits-all policy. And cities have their own unique DNA, so you've got to work with that. But I have, over the years, I've experienced there are some key criteria, I suppose, which the successful cities have. The first thing is having this sense of the ability to deliver and develop a long-term plan. So they think past political cycles, they look to the future, they prepare.
They're resilient.
Yeah, and I guess resilient to change. So these long-term plans are critical because you've got to signal to the people, to the investors, to your new talent that you want to attract, where you're going and how you're going to get there. And so often successful cities do that really well. So that's the first thing. The second one is being courageous. Making those really bold decisions. So it's all about the leadership, the political leadership in particular, being strong, being resilient, and being really courageous around some of those harder issues to fix, because cities are never static. The ones that are growing are never static. And so there's constant change. And so it's difficult, and navigating that change, choreographizing or being a choreography component to that is almost like managing an orchestra and being the conductor of an orchestra. And so you need strong leadership to do that, and political leadership is key. And
I would imagine you need a strong vision, and you've stated before that vision without a budget is a hallucination. So how do our governments balance a truly ambitious visionary plan with the political and financial realities of short budget cycles?
Gosh, yeah. Well, vision without a budget is a hallucination, but a budget without a vision is inefficient. And so, you need both. And so the cities, I suppose, that we talk about having been successful are those cities that are able to propose a long-term plan. They're able to align a mission which the community, the private sector are all aligned to, and they then bring in the budgets and the programs that support that. It's a bit like, how do you make the ship go faster? Everything has to align to a North Star. And then when you do that, your supporters, your partners come on board. And I suppose one thing that I've noticed that public sector or governments can't be expected to solve every wicked city alone. They need to look to partners, so creativity, innovation, budgets, capital. That's where the private sector comes in. But the magic of cities is really when you bring academia, the community, governments, private sector together. That's when the magic happens.
And it sounds incredibly complex. Where do you think it's gone wrong? There are many examples of cities that have struggled, and I believe that the key piece of that is really not having a long-term plan for their city. They have these sorts of master plans which are kind of long-term but sit on shelves. They have projects which are quick fix plasters to issues that come up. But you need both. You need long-term planning and you need short-term tactical projects which are all aligned to that long-term plan. And so I see the cities that have got it wrong is where they react rather, I suppose, reactively to issues without planning them. The other piece, Belinda, which I think is really important is communication. And we've talked about this before when I've talked with you, but we lose people when we don't communicate properly. And so I don't think that is something that is thought through as well as it might. And so really bringing people along through that journey of change is so important. So the communications teams are so important to get that narrative right, building a series of champions across a city so that everybody is understanding the opportunities of a place. And I also see change as a behavior change issue. It's almost psychological. I believe we should be psychologists before we are planners or architects or engineers, because who's the customer? Not the engineering or the car or the bus, but the person. I love that
and
idea.
People, understand people, and you can understand how to build people-centered cities. And
psychology is so linked to people, and as you were saying before, cities are all about bringing people together.
That's right.
So let's talk a little bit about climate change and net zero targets. London has an ambitious, aggressive target to hit net zero by 2030. What is the reality of this, in your point of view? And do you think Sydney and Melbourne need to be a little bit more ambitious?
Yeah, I think the greenest energy we can use is the energy we don't use. So what I mean by that is that it doesn't sound very sophisticated, but if we design cities in a more compact way where people could walk, they could walk to their shops, they could walk to restaurants, they could get to work really easily, you'd really minimize the need to travel, which is a huge impact on climate. And so I think design really is the most important responsibility or response to climate change. And so the targets are ways to, I guess, to capture and to manage and to vet and to order your improvement. But the best thing you can do is actually build and design and construct better cities, more compact, more walkable, more human, and the rest follows. And so, planting trees is a good idea. I've often said, if your city has a problem, often the answer is plant a street tree. They're almost like urban acupuncture moments where their impact is far greater than people initially understand. It's
been regularly pointed out, actually, that planting trees is not part of often a target. So thinking about urban design, and I agree with you, it's such an important part of creating good cities. Let's talk about something a little controversial. Melbourne's Docklands, it's often been compared to London's Canary Wharf. And they get compared because of their similarities as large-scale post-industrial waterfront regeneration projects.
Yeah.
And you've played a key role in both of these precincts, or you've been involved in them both. If you could create the perfect waterfront regeneration project and there was no wind, what would it look like?
It's a great question. It's interesting with waterfronts. They were places initially where people weren't really encouraged to be. There was large industry there. There was large oversized machinery. It wasn't a place where you could promenade and walk. And I think what I've seen over the years with waterfronts is that the waterfront should be the living room of a city, not the commercial foyer. And so I think cities that have got it wrong are the ones that have spent too much time building those corporate towers and corporate areas without thinking about the other pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. So what I mean by that is the mixed use components of places. And the point you made about wind is, whilst we made it in a joking way.
We make a joke about it.
It's really important.
They're both.
Yeah, people don't like to be on the edge of water in the middle of winter when it's cold. And so what successful waterfronts do is, firstly, they think about it being a living room, so a place where you can call home. But that requires personal things. So what are the artifacts and small things on this big stage? What are the small things that people can do? The small nooks and crannies, the areas where you can get a little bit of respite from the wind and from the sun, areas out of the cold, out of the shade, areas where you can be more human scaled. And that is one thing I've noticed. The other part is really important, is often waterfronts, the successful ones, they actually bring with them the narratives of the past. So they will have the memories of the past, whether it be old cranes that are left there, old bollards that were the signs of where the ships used to get moored, or even tram tracks are left in the ground. And when we worked in Auckland, I was there for 13 years, the stories of the past was as important as the story of the future. And so that nod to the past meant leaving some things in situ as they were, providing that sense of, it's like people, we like lines on people.
Is it harder then for a city like Melbourne and Sydney that is much newer than the older cities like London and in Europe? Is it harder to create that romantic city version that you've just described, where you're embracing history?
Yeah, God, what a great question. Think about how old we are. We're several hundred years old, and if not hundreds of thousands of years old. And I think it's more the post-colonial world is 200 years old. And there's a lot of history there. And so lots of the suburbs of Sydney and Melbourne have these wonderful heritage buildings. The Victorian buildings of Melbourne are something that is world class. So I think there's enough history there. It's not eradicating it, and it's about finding that, and it's about almost being like an anthropologist. You almost have to take away the dust and the sand and actually reveal the city that was there and the stories that are there. And I think that is really the skill of an urban designer and a landscape architect, is to really discover those hidden signals. And there's a lot to it. There's a lot more than people realise.
I love this, and I could talk about cities all day with you, Ludo, but I've got one last question for you because we're running out of time. You told me you grew up with the ambition to be a doctor, and you ended up a city planner. So now, as a self-confessed city doctor, so we're going to call you the city doctor, can you tell us why you love helping cities?
Well, yeah, I guess I wanted to heal. I wanted to help. I wanted to be valuable in some way in my career and in the job that I did. And so, being a doctor seemed like a great way to help people and to help revive them and help them flourish and provide a sense of well-being. And I ended up, I wasn't either smart enough or got distracted, but I ended up an urban planner, as you say. But what I quickly realized, Belinda, was that the way we plan, the way we design, the way we construct, but the way we govern cities has a huge impact on the health and well-being, not of just one person, but of a street, of a community, of a whole metropolis. And so in some respects, my dream has come true, but not in the way I originally intended. But I've become a sort of city doctor, and I think that not just me, but it's a team sport. Yeah. And so everybody that's involved in cities is actually in the medical profession, in the health profession. And so, governments that bring planning and health together, that's the key.
Well, may you diagnose and make many of our cities well, and thank you so much, Ludo. It's been lovely having you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
This program has been brought to you by Harper. This is Tika. We'll be right back.